Okay, welcome back to the second part of today's event. We now have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Alexander Rack, who I would like to briefly introduce to you now. He studied physics at the Technical University of Berlin and received his degree from the same university, doctorate, in 2006 from the Department of Materials Processing. For the latter, he received the Ernst Eckhard Koch Prize of the Bessie-2 synchrotron light source, which was of course located in Berlin, Germany in 2008. And for his first postdoc position, he joined the Anker synchrotron light source in Karlsruhe in Germany, where he was in charge of synchrotron instrumentation for hard X-ray microimaging. In 2008, he moved to France to work at the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in Grenoble. Initially working at the microdiffraction and microscopy beamline, he soon joined the microtomography beamline, ID19, which he is heading as responsible beamline scientist since 2016. Present research interests are the study of time results phenomena by means of ultra-fast hard X-ray imaging, which includes shock and crack propagation in dense matter, as well as materials processing, such as additive manufacturing. Since 2016, he is deputy group head of the Structure of Materials Group of the ESRF. And Dr. Rack will today talk to us about synchrotron-based hard X-ray microtomography at beats, potential future applications in Qatar. Dr. Rack, floor is all yours. Dr. Rack, can you hear us? Alexander?
I hear something. He's writing in the... But it's...
Yes, we can hear you. Please feel free to start.
So you hear me clearly? You can hear me clearly,
yes? Absolutely.
Okay, then I just start because
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, and welcome to the nice introduction, which I couldn't hear, but I can imagine. Thanks for giving me this presentation here, the chance to present. Also, another sorry that I cannot remove the mask, but that's part of the confinement rules here in France. I hope you still understand me anyway. Based on the excellent talk I had from my previous colleagues, I will, in the next 25 minutes, speak a little bit about applications when using synchrotron radiation for hard X-ray imaging, especially for microtomography, and also, of course, with the hope to inspire a little bit future applications from you as a user of this beautiful device we are installing at the SESAME light source. So when we go back to the talk which Jean-Luc just gave to us, there was a lot of mentioning of new terms probably for you, such as phase contrast. I'm very happy he went already to all the theory explaining that. I have now the pleasure more to show you some nice examples what that means in reality. So, for example, why we come to a synchrotron, what is a nice goodie. So I start with a nice picture. This is already synchrotron data. Explicitly, I like to say this is not ESF data. So many of my examples I choose are taken from other light sources, just to show that basically what we are going to present here is also something which you will be able to do at the SESAME light source at the Beats beamline. This is a mosquito. That's an image at hard X-rays. That's already a nice example for a synchrotron application. Why? Well, the mosquito here is fully unstained. That's fresh organism, and we see it with hard X-rays. Why? We can see it not because of a shadowgraphy, which we are used from classical X-ray imaging. This is because we have refraction at interfaces. I hope you see my mouse cursor. Nevertheless, when you look around the objects, you have everywhere this white halo. This is what Jean-Luc introduced to you as X-ray phase contrast, and that makes imaging at a synchrotron light source very sensitive to find details. Yeah. The other thing is, of course, we get high resolution, and that means we already goes on that one, and that's another advantage of using phase contrast. The phase contrast basically is not based on absorption, so even if you put a lot of photons on your sample, it doesn't necessarily mean you choose. As a reminder, this is so enough very fast images. This is a few images per second, and that's all efficient, for example, to make an in vivo study, which is extremely nice for some otherwise. Organs, for example, you have to freeze dry it, so basically you damage it, yeah, or you have to cut it in whatever way. A powerful approach. And it was not so fast. And again, the data from the Anker light source in Germany, light source which has similar specs than the SESAME light source. Again, phase contrast, I would use that one more time, or strengthen one more contrast when using a synchrotron light source for X-ray imaging. Phase contrast is really a magic. On the left, this is a materials research. This is an aluminium magnesium alloy tomography. Basically, we don't see anything besides a bit of noise. Yeah? And then the phase contrast that is from light source is that you just move your detector a little bit away. You know, we are moving from 2 centimeters to 10. And please say that helps you completely richer. So suddenly we make the invisible visible by refraction on interfaces. So in this case, we see different material phases very nicely. Why we see them? Again, because we have refraction at interfaces. Yeah? And phase contrast is also nice if you want to go up a bit more in speed, because even if you have a very noisy picture, still the eye is very good to discriminate this refraction interface I mentioned before. So quickly, we had already an introduction what is tomography all about. The synchrotron, basically, the main difference is compared to the medical scanner that we rotate the sample and not the source like in a medical scanner. That can be a constraint. Yeah? If you want to do fast acquisition, you have to be also able to rotate your sample very fast. So in most of the cases I'm going to show you, that's rather static example. So what we see here is raw data acquired at the Bessie light source. So that's on the left. These are radiographic projections from a mouse jawbone. What we see here is already quite high resolution data. The mouth, you can imagine, it's a small head, so even a smaller jawbone and very tiny teeth. And despite in this basically small object, we see a lot of fine structure. We see the teeth, we see the root structure, the bone. It means we acquire maybe 1,000 to maybe 2 angles of view from the same sample by rotating. That what we call the sinogram. If I take one line from my detector, from projection data, the sinogram real space image. It is a standard. What's happening? You take line by line. Back to the slide, 1,000 the same projection. It's visible through the screen. You see even very tiny here an interface, so that's the soft tissue, and here's the embedding material. So even that we are resolving. That gives you a flavor, and the big contrast here, these are obviously porosities, and then this here we have bone. And if you
Dr. Rack, Alexandra, can you hear us? It seems that we have lost the sound. Alexander, can everyone else hear Alexander? We cannot hear here, and I can see Andrea noting that he cannot hear. Alexander, there seems to be a bandwidth issue, connection issue at Dr. Rack's end. Alexander, can you hear us? So due to low bandwidth, local computer conditions at Dr. Rack's end, there seems to be a problem. So when the conditions improve, the notification here shows that we should be able to continue. Dr. Rack, can you hear us?
It's good to turn off the camera, keep the mic on.
Yes. So suggestion could be if you can turn off your video to reduce the load on the bandwidth and keep the presentation on, and of course the volume. Let us try this way if it would work. These are, of course, some of the issues that we live through in these days of the pandemic. Attempting to connect and communicate is always conditional for local conditions in terms of bandwidth. Dr. Rack, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
We cannot hear you for the moment.
Can you hear me?
Ah, very good. Yes, we do hear you, and we see your presentation. Would you like to please continue? Let's try without the video. I'm sorry, we cannot see you.
It's okay, you know my face
continue.
now. Okay. So I don't know when the last time you heard me. I was telling you that basically when we have stacks of slices, we enter those stacks of slices into our rendering software. And I hope if I go forward and back in my video, up, then basically we get a volume image. For us, a volume image is a virtual image of the mass distribution inside a sample. And again, at a synchrotron, widely non-destructive, high resolution and high contrast. Yeah. That was the introduction part on the tomographic technique itself. Yeah. An important aspect again is the phase contrast technique, because it's really the boosting in terms of contrast. Yeah. My personal belief is if you come to a synchrotron light source, then it's not necessarily about highest resolution. Laboratory sources give you also high resolution nowadays. The big thing on a synchrotron light source is contrast, and for us the name of the game is phase contrast. Yeah? So if I take again the example of the mosquito, with whom I started my presentation. Yeah? On the left, we basically see already a beautiful pictures. Is what we call the inline X-ray phase contrast, where we see nicely the interfaces. What I already showed you on the very first slide, which is very nice. And for example, if you want to do a visualization, this is very powerful because the human eye is very strong in identifying interfaces in the picture. Nevertheless, for image processing can be complicated, and there are things like face retrieval, which is on the right side. Again, for you as a user, it's not important to know the mathematics behind, just to know that it exists. But also basically by one more image processing step, we can boost the contrast even further towards this picture. And the advantage is if you have, when you look on the bottom right, on such a tomographic slice reconstructed after phase retrieval, that's very easy later then to process with the software, as I mentioned, for example, to do high resolution 3D rendering like that. So then you have basically the full mosquito head, and that's something which is very powerful and again very important. It's almost technique. It's almost out of the box. Yeah. Again, as a wrapping up, why it's beneficial to go for synchrotron light to do X-ray imaging. What are our advantages compared to laboratory-based sources? Is the higher contrast. Narrow bandwidth means also less beam hardening. We usually use a quasi-parallel beam for imaging. It makes usually also the reconstruction quality better, and especially we have the phase contrast as the excellent sensitivity. I don't want just not only to make highlight of synchrotron, of course. The drawbacks are, one, it's usually more expensive. Okay, for you that doesn't matter, because for you as a user, usually the access to the beam time is for free, because you will go through a proposal system, so that doesn't matter, but in the end it will matter as a taxpayer. And of course the amount of beam time is limited. So if you have the idea to scan 1,000 samples for statistic relevance, then you might have a conflict with the amount of beam time available. But again, if you go now through a few other samples, if you keep in mind the excellent contrast, which I found important, and you can do beautiful things out of the box at a synchrotron light. So this is more materials research example. This is a carbon fiber reinforced silicon carbide ceramic. It's something which, for example, Porsche uses for the brakes. It's a high heat load material. What we see on the left is a tomographic slice. This is again data from Bessie, from the light source in Berlin. You see again very rich contrast. Also, we have in black the carbon error. We have in gray the silicon, and the interfaces we have silicon carbide, which was just formed. There's roughly 4 micron resolution, and then you can do even a zoom in, and then basically you see even cracks inside the material, which happens during manufacturing. This is all synchrotron data, again high contrast. Just as a reminder, at a synchrotron, especially at the SESAME light source, there is not only the beads beamline, there are also other beamlines like the infrared and the fluorescence beamline, and of course there are also other possibilities to do correlative studies. I think then X-ray imaging becomes even more powerful, because you can non-destructively do many investigations. For example, this is from Bessie. This is a piece of pergament where basically they analyzed what is written there and with which material it was written. I have to admit, due to the breaks, I lost a little bit how much time I have left. I think it's roughly 10 minutes. I would, after we basically went now through the goodies of the advantages of using a synchrotron for X-ray imaging, I would like to show a few more detailed examples, also making you a bit more sensitive what can be done on a synchrotron light source and not. X-ray imaging itself is a wide field, which I would like to depict with these slides. Of course, there's a lot of things done for inspection. Nevertheless, Beamline, as I said, beam time is limited, so you are not basically doing high throughput inspections for industry. Life science is a very rich topic. Everywhere where you use microscopy, basically you can also use a synchrotron microtomography, because we are basically a 3-dimensional non-destructive microscope. Same for materials characterization, studying novel materials. Non-destructive testing, of course, would be interesting, but typically you don't do big objects at a synchrotron because the beam size is limited. Medical applications partially only possible because one of the things, indeed, I always say non-destructive, but the dose we can put on the sample is rather tremendous. So, for example, we are far away from basically doing. So the beam we are put on the sample is life-endangering. So this dose is really something to keep in mind. Further examples from which I collected just to hopefully to inspire a little bit. One is from the biomedical materials research, is bone regeneration and recovery of defects. Why? Well, if you have large-scale defects in a bone, there's basically the need to repair it. The standard solutions, either for that's something what probably every day happens to someone, is for teeth, bone are implants, which are combined with bone regeneration materials to make sure you have enough you have bone to hold the implant. And then there are even larger cases, basically when you have a cancer treatment where huge pieces of bone need to be replaced. And the gold standard here up to now is usually bone transplantation. I don't know about the treatment here on the right on the school. I had once a bone regeneration approach just for teeth, and I can tell you that was not a very pleasant exercise. So I personally was quite interested to figure out how to improve that. One big field by medical application and materials research are, for example, dental implants, which we studied at a synchrotron, again at the DESI light source. Just a quick overview: in modern dental implant is made of usually nowadays on several pieces. Usually you have the main implant, which is inserted into the defect. Then you give it a healing period of a few months, and only then you start to enter other pieces, which basically then allow you to build up a crown. And the crucial thing is for the implant industry is this interface between the abutment and the implant, which can be a source for microbacterial leakage into the interior of the implant, which can then be a risk for an inflammation. And there are almost religious discussions in the implant industry. What is the best interface between to make that leak tight? Should it be a butt joint or should it be conical? Well, and the nice thing is, again, with a synchrotron, because we have this excellent contrast, if we do an image of such an implant, we see even very, very tiny interfaces, because that's again what we mentioned in the beginning, because you have the phase contrast. So we did a lot of studies comparing different implants design, and showing to industry where in their design can be weak points, where they have gaps between the different pieces, which could be a reason or not for microbacterial leakage into the interior of the implant, which is a very important case. Bone research, that's an example from the Advanced Light Source. That's a facility in San Francisco, also with similar sizes than the SESAME light source. Bone research, again, what I said already, the dose we put normally to the sample is quite high, but basically if you do properly your dose management, you can do bone research, and then you can beautifully also here visualize cracks. That's a bit older data, and again, cracks, why they are nice to visualize. We have phase contrast and we see the interfaces very nicely. An example for the regeneration of bone is what happens nowadays if you have a defect in a bone and you don't want to make a bone transplantation, is you use bioceramic materials. What happens inside a bony defect when you put these particles like tricalcium phosphates, they basically decompose very slowly, so they prevent the soft tissue to grow into the defect. And while they decompose, they set minerals free, which the bone needs to form. That's like a rather modern approach for bone regeneration, which works very nicely. And there's a lot of things to study. So on the right, this is data again from the BESI light source. We see this bone regeneration particle. This is actually a very nice picture because you see a lot of particles. That was also very clear for those people who developed these materials that is a very bad bioceramic material, because 3 months after implementation, there was almost no new fresh bone. Basically, all the particles were still there. That, for example, means they decompose much too slow. And why, again, here you need a synchrotron? Well, people here need a nice contrast again between.
We can hear you now properly.
So you hear me or you don't hear me?
Can you hear us? We hear you now.
Peace. Okay.
So
I say
there was
something.
a few
should I just
moments
continue?
when there was a problem with the sound, but not very long. So I suggest that you simply continue. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Sorry for that. Also what I wanted to show with this slide is that in materials research we have a lot of dynamics which are not very fast. So basically also at the beamline where we can do tomography rather rapid, maybe not fast, but rapid. You can track dynamics in 3 dimensions. For example, if you take a raw material like a rock or like a magma, put it in the furnace and heat it up and do a temperature ramp, and then you do tomography at specific time points, you can track dynamics in 3 dimensions. Other examples for heat treatment can be the crack propagation inside a material. Again, here basically also the Beamline will need your input as a user. Usually the Beamline will provide you the excellent synchrotron imaging facility. And then of course it's to some extent would be also nice if the user come up with ideas. This is a nice example again from the advanced light source. I think this is basically a joint project where the synchrotron offers the beam time and the imaging capabilities, and where the user basically came up with that furnace to do the very sophisticated experiment. Last example from materials research. This is again BESI data. What is nowadays fashion is to look on batteries. Also here tomography at the synchrotron at higher energies is very interesting. Why? Well, on the left we see a slide through a commercial battery. Contrast gives the steel housing, the manganese ring, the zinc powder. On the right, basically, we see a false colored picture. Nice thing again is when you have high contrast, you can do a beautiful segmentation on all these, and then you can study, for example, the powder decomposition with time. Don't need very high time resolution when you discharge a battery. This is all work done very successfully as the BESI light source at the moment with hard X-rays, with tomography, to study batteries and fuel cells. And that, of course, is, as you can imagine, at the moment, a very hot topic in the field. Well, and I think, with that, I would probably rather finish my presentation. I thank you for your attention. I'm sorry for all the technical problems. We did a test yesterday, and that worked fine. I still hope I have time, and I still hope I can hear some of your questions. Thank you very much.